Hey, did
Hey,
it work?
how you doing?
Good. Sorry, I haven't been on a Zoom call in a little bit, so I forgot where all the buttons were.
My God, the quality of your camera. Are
I
you shooting with
know.
like a red camera or something? Jeez.
Oh no, just DSLR. But they did give me the software so it hooks up.
Oh, nice. Yeah, I've got my Canon right here, but yours looks so much better. Of course, you're a professional director of photography, so it's
Full auto.
all right. Well, I'm just going to use the auto button from now instead of trying to be professional about it. So, Jonathan, it's wonderful to meet you. I don't think we've actually met before. I came on later in the life of the show, and yes, and these are my co-hosts, Kate and Calissa.
Hello. Hi.
Well, how are you today, sir?
I'm good. It's hot here. It's a little bit of running around. Thankfully, I got panicked yesterday when I saw your email and it said Eastern Standard. I'm like, damn it! I got a little window I made.
No, it was all correct. I just wrote the wrong thing, and then thank God my phone is on me at all times, just for such an emergency, and we were able to get that sorted out. But no, yes, you were right. I was just typing too fast with my.
No, that's good. I live and die by my iCal between my wife and I. So it's like I wake up in the morning, I look, what do I got to do? Make sure it's all in line and make sure it's all going to work. When are we handing things off?
Nice.
So I got panicked.
I understand. Well, I'm glad we're able to talk today about Teen Wolf, this amazing show that's kind of touched all of our lives and that people are still discovering and loving because it's awesome. So thank you for taking the time to join us.
Thanks for figuring out how to fit me in.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, let's dive in. Jonathan, how did Teen Wolf come into your life?
Russell McKay and I did a film about a year before Teen Wolf where we were both. I was recommended from a producer friend, and we met, and immediately we got along really well. We both had the same sort of vision and way that we like to talk about things. It all married very well. We went off and did this noir film and had a blast. It basically became me and Russell versus everybody, including the state we were shooting in and the production company. And we ended up making a great movie despite all these obstacles. And I think at the end of it, he and I became good friends.
Nice.
And about 4 months after we wrapped that movie, he called me. He's like, I got a really strange thing I'd like to throw at you. And he didn't tell me what it was. The company had forwarded me the script, and it said Untitled on it. And after I read it, I called him and I said, is this like the Michael J. Is this Teen Wolf? And he's like, yeah. I'm like, really? And then right after he's like, what do you think? I said, I think it's awesome. I would have never guessed you could have made some sort of teen, like a very, I don't know how to use a good word, but not a campy version of that movie into a TV show. And the minute I said that, he's like, think Lost Boys. And I was like, I know exactly what you want. So
nice. That's really awesome. So, okay. So you were just kind of reading this script cold. I know that, Scott Howard is now Scott McCall for the show, and Beacon Town, terrible name for a town, is Beacon Hills. At what point did you start putting it together? Were you like, this feels oddly familiar in places?
Well, thankfully, while I read it, the initial read of it, I didn't really remember all the details of the movie. I just knew there was a guy in high school that turned into a wolf. And eventually I started thinking, this is really close to that movie that I watched once,
Yeah.
And but then once he said that, or once I sort of picked up on it, I rewatched the movie. And I'm like, man, I don't know what I could do with it. Like, I don't know how to make it anything, if it was going to be campy, if it's going to have the guy in a gorilla suit, like what? How does this work on TV and it's not a comedy? Is the first concern I have.
Right.
And after he and Jeff, when I finally met Jeff, they both said we want it to be dark and not Twilight-y, but in that idea where it's a little bit more, in my terms, mean, a little bit more, a little grittier. And because I feel like I like those shows. I felt like teen audiences might too.
Nice. Fantastic.
A fun story.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's funny reading your email, about the questions that that you were going to ask is kind of I forgot about a lot of that stuff. I had to actually go and look up some of these scenes you talked about, and because it was 10 years ago, so
can't believe all that time's fast.
Yes,
Crazy
that way, but yeah,
nice. Feels like yesterday.
So you're credited as both a cinematographer and DP on Teen Wolf. Is there a difference between the two?
I didn't know I was credited as both, but I do believe the director of photography term is newer. The original term is cinematographer because I think it was along the lines of the cameraman. There was a lighting team and a camera team, and I think at one time it was primarily a camera job. Now it sort of encompasses the whole thing. So cinematographer still refers mostly to hands-on shooters, which I am. On the TV show, I operated as much as everybody would let me. So I'm definitely a hands-on guy. I think cinematographer is the right term.
Okay, so can you explain to our listeners what the role is for a cinematographer for those who might not be as familiar with the term?
It's a very long word for person that takes the idea from the writers, directors, and creative team and tells them how you can do it physically with lights, camera, and action in order to take something that's written and build it into a visual. If there's an intent on a slug line that says, the character is very scared in a room, but he doesn't say anything or she doesn't say anything. Cinematographer would be the person who could throw ideas at how can the camera show that they're very scared if they're not saying anything? Can the lighting make it a more scary environment? Can the movement that we do feel like we're closing in on them? Things like that. So I take the black and white word with the creative team and put it into a visual context that's understood.
It's fantastic.
Really cool. I remember jumping back to Callista's original question on the commentary for the movie Red Dragon. I think Dante Spinotti, the cinematographer on that, was saying, I think it was the director, I don't remember who it was, but asked, why do you go by cinematographer? Or someone asked, he said, I go by cinematographer because there should only be one director on set. And I thought that was kind of interesting. He was also quite accomplished like yourself. So,
he's quite the cinematographer. If there was anybody to bring up, that's a good one. I like that.
Well, he made that movie. I mean, that movie's not great, unfortunately, but it has a fantastic look. I don't know.
Disagree.
I don't know. Maybe it's just
you will.
Maybe it's just because Brett Ratner directed it, and I really don't like him. So, but it feels like it could take place almost in the universe of Teen Wolf. They have very maybe a similar palette or something like that, where it's very spooky and drippy in places, and just awesome
and very tattoo driven.
Very tattoo driven. Yes, absolutely. So. Yes,
I'll take that. He's a great cinematographer.
Absolutely. Teen Wolf. To move on to more beautiful things. Teen Wolf is a beautifully shot series and kind of instantly makes its mark in season 1 with all these wonderful iconic shots and with a great show style. What was the process like of finding the look in the pilot and then also in season 1 of what exactly Teen Wolf looks like?
I don't want to go too far down the rabbit hole as far as technology goes, but when we did this, when the pilot was first going forward, it was both the dawning of shooting outside of California in these incentive states in Georgia, in Atlanta. There in 2009 or 10. There have been a few movies that had started going out there, but it was sort of just starting for anything that was not a big film that was going there for, big set pieces that already existed or specific reasons to be there for the tax incentives and things like that. So we were the little guy that showed up with a little pilot from a little television company, Viacom or MTV, is not known for doing hour dramas. This was the first one. And so they, we were kind of treated like the kid in the corner. And that also timed up with sort of the digital revolution, with cameras evolving very quickly. The writer's strike and everything had made, or I guess it was SAG, had made everything that was shooting on television a different contract, so you couldn't shoot film. So Russell and I were film people. Mm-hmm. We did a movie on film, right? The one I talked about, we did on 35 millimeter. He was a big film guy. We had to shoot videotape. And on the pilot, it was very limiting because it was the dawn of this technology. Great images, just really new. So the first thing that I told him, if we want to get the feel of 35 millimeter, to get this sort of cinematic look that he and I are interested in, the best way to do it is to do it dark. And he's like, well, how dark? And I said, darker the better, because the brighter stuff tends to not feel as cinematic. You can get away with a little bit more if it's a little bit lower light. And he said, do it. Even the day scenes, just do it. Okay. So we figured out how to make it look good on a pretty cheap budget, and I leaned into trying to make it feel more like a 90s action movie. If I was going to shoot a 90s action movie with lighting technology that existed then, big lights far away, cameras with long lenses, treating the digital tools we had like these old tools that we've had for 100 years. And we chose a colder color palette. We also happened to be in Georgia when it was, nothing was in the trees because it was cold, and everything had like a little bit of a moisture on it, which really added to it. It was we actually really leaned into that. And I think even when we shot the pilot there, we had to, not an insurance pay, but we had to like split it because it had such a giant rainstorm in the middle of shooting in the woods that we were shooting in sort of a valley in this woods that they shut down our generator, and the AD teams and the personnel were like, we have to get out of here before we're all stuck. So they just pulled the plug middle of the day or middle of the night, and we rolled out, and we came in the next day to finish up. We had to add to that, but I think we ended up shooting a lot of stuff like we ended up in like a circus tent, at base camp or something.
Nice.
Anyway, to answer your question, the look that we did was more, the intention was there, obviously, but the way to get there was so unusual at the time that we were very happy with what we ended up getting, and we tried to stick with that throughout. That's
cool. When the moment you said to kind of to feel like a 90s action film, the first thing that popped in my head was the opening credit sequence to Hard Target, starring Jean-Claude Van Damme and directed by John Woo, and just that sequence of Lance Henriksen and his goons chasing that guy through New Orleans as they're hunting him for the game or whatever it was, and it that's really cool that you were like aiming for that sort of genre of time and place when it comes to the type of lighting you wanted to do. That's really cool.
Well, we knew that, I got to meet the cast, most of them, before we went to do the pilot. A few of them got hired pretty right before we shot, but I met them, and immediately I'm like, these kids look incredible. I could hit them with anything as far as the light goes, and they're going to look great. They're good. They're bright eyes. They're all smiles. They have great, everything's going to be fine. These kids glow in the dark. And then, you get worried sometimes. Some people really hate, certain, lighting hitting them, or it makes them feel older, or they, they don't like certain attributes of different photography. But we got lucky that our cast were very photogenic, fun.
It helps. It definitely helps.
How did you approach filming a scene that was heavy in visual effects that would be added in post?
I actually have a lot of experience shooting with computer-generated additions and green screen and composite photography. So on this, it was a little different in the sense that a lot of the elements that we were doing were sort of integrated, and they were 100% necessary thematically and to the narrative. Both the eyes, when the characters would have color changes in their eyes, as well as some of these big chase sequences that needed to be ramped up. So Russell or Tim or whoever was directing and I would sit down and have any sort of brainstorm session that would be, how can we make these scenes the easiest possible way we can? So not only because of our time, but also if it's too, my approach was, if it's too big of a spectacle, you're not going to win Hollywood at their game. Their game is big blockbusters. You're not going to do better than a Fast and the Furious. So the best thing that you can do on a small scale is to just do it different and to use all the tools to be not campy, not odd, don't draw too much attention, but just make it cool. So if we wanted somebody to run fast, can we just make them run fast in camera? Can we do something where we under crank? Can we do, what do these tricks look like? And most of the time, at least in my opinion, simpler is better. So a lot of times we did it the old school way, if we could. And anything that was CG that had to have like a fake background plate, we did the simplest version of that. Use that one shot for that one gag, and that's it.
Very smart.
Yeah, that's very cool.
How would you characterize the visual style of Teen Wolf compared to other shows that you've worked on?
How would I compare them? Well, again, Teen Wolf was the first TV series I'd ever actually shot. I was very young. I was coming straight out of the indie film world directly into a pilot that got greenlit and immediately went into production. So it was like a whirlwind. I think when we shot day one on the actual show being greenlit, I was 26. And
wow.
Yeah. Now side note, I think I was the youngest to actually have an hour series. However, so I was very young. And for me to jump in with both feet there and learn the speed, the protocols, and sort of the people that have the people's opinions that are brought in at what time they're brought in. I wasn't used to that, so I learned a lot on the job on Teen Wolf as far as how television is shot versus a movie. So that Teen Wolf was my baseline. Later on in my career, when I went down to do other shows, and including things like my tiny bit on Walking Dead, our show was tiny comparatively. It was such a home, I didn't know it, but I realized really quickly that our show was such a small sort of crew base and such a ramped up speed, because I just assumed that's all how they were. But it wasn't. It was a Viacom doing their first TV show, so they were trying to be as very, put it all on the screen as possible, get it as done as fast as we can, as good as we can, but we have things we got to meet. And so my baseline was, this is how quickly it has to be done. And then I went on other shows and learned that, hey, wait a minute. How come these guys aren't doing twice as much stuff as us then? How come we're just barely making, so I actually felt very good once I learned that other people were working almost half as much and getting about the same quality. So
that's amazing.
I'd go on a bigger show that was twice the size, and it'd be like, oh, that's all we're shooting today? Okay.
It's like, I thought we had like 40 more setups to go or something like that.
No, they have a big craft service tent. And like, oh, this is cool though. Yeah, I'll take a look.
Nice.
You also worked on Open Gate with Tyler Hoechlin. Was that filmed before Teen Wolf? And what was it like working with him on both projects?
So Open Gate was, I have a small company with a friend that does indie movies that we do physical production on. and that was one of my partner's projects out of Texas. It was a rodeo movie, and we had just finished shooting the pilot for Teen Wolf. And when my partner wanted to put this movie together, he was looking for somebody who was basically Tyler. I mean, good-looking dude, well-built, looks like he could, be in a rodeo, could, act well, basically everything that Tyler was. So I had just worked with him. I said, this guy's pretty great. Maybe we should call his people. Called his people. They saw that my name was on the project. So it legitimized it really quick, which I didn't realize my name would do at the time. I don't think it really did. It's just he knew one of the people involved. And he came down to Texas. We shot the project. And during that film that we were shooting, we both read that Teen Wolf had gotten picked up as a TV show. So it was sort of this fun way to remember it. So
that's incredible.
awesome.
That's so cool.
Yeah.
He's a great guy. Tyler is literally you can tell him to do anything and he'll figure out a way to do it, even if it's not really possible. And I learned that really early on that rodeo movie, because we had real rodeo bull riders, and we had real bulls that were, they're like trucks that jump and kick. And he would run in and run across one of the arenas to do a scene, and man, I'm not getting in there. I'm going to be behind this thing with a camera.
Oh wow, that's so cool. That's so cool. Were there any differences? We just talked about this a little bit, but what do you think were the biggest differences between something like Teen Wolf and The Walking Dead? I know you talked about, craft service, obviously, but yeah.
I can be a little more specific, I guess. So a show like The Walking Dead, which again I got to do just a very little on, but I had a great time, and their show is designed a little bit more. I don't know if looser is the right term, but because it's a bigger ensemble and it's primarily like a cat and mouse game, they're basically having scenes, and almost at any time there's a zombie that could come and get them, right? So a lot of the stuff that they did on Walking Dead is everything's blocked somewhat more generally, because there is a little bit more of a naturalistic feel to that show by design. So they do a lot of scenes that have a lot more people in them, as well as a little bit more interactive with the environment. Whereas Teen Wolf seemed to be, at least the way that I did it when I was there, was everything had to have a specific reason, because with teens and with the MTV world, we were going up against people who watched music videos all the time. Well, maybe they were less at that time too, but it was music videos and it was reality shows. So in order to get a serialized audience in that network world, we had to have nonstop interesting things happen all the time. So it was either building it in lighting, in blocking, in a good one-liner every couple of minutes, or something that would make it something that keeps the interest of people that were younger. Whereas I feel a show like The Walking Dead has more of a core audience of a wider berth of ages that are able to follow a narrative and wait it out a little bit for that, cliffhanger, or that, very last second, conclusion. Whereas in Teen Wolf world, we knew that if we did that, we'd lose some audience members relatively quickly. So
Gotcha.
At least we thought so.
Right. That's very interesting. That's really cool. That's really cool.
You're not wrong. I did quit Walking Dead, but continued Teen Wolf.
Is there a scene from season 1 or 2 that was particularly fun to film?
I unfortunately don't know any of the episodes or whatever it was in, but I can tell you locations that there were very cool places to shoot.
Yeah.
Yes, please.
All of my work in the pilot, season 1 and season 2, were all done in and around Atlanta, Georgia, and it was definitely season 2. But we had shot everything that was woods in this sort of nature preserve that was there for they rented it to like companies to have outings or picnics or whatever. It was a beautiful area that was probably a square mile, and it had a river that ran through it and everything. So we used it on its off season during the winter because it was cold and you definitely didn't want to hang out there. But we used it for our forest, where we would do all our running scenes or anything taking place in the forest at night. It has a beautiful river in it. And we did a scene where Colton was coming out of the water at night. And I'm surprised I didn't see chunks of ice floating in it. And the water must have been just above freezing. And he waded out there, dunked his head down, waited a second and popped up and then walked out. And we couldn't believe it because the kid has no body fat to begin with. So putting him in there, it's like the hypothermia was just a few seconds away. I was very impressed with how dedicated and how strong these actors were from such a young age. Anyway, that environment had that. I remember the rivers, we used the river a lot as well as the woods. We also built a house that was that was sort of burnt down in that woods, and we built it. Me and Russell sat down and scouted where that would be, and it was just a 2-wall set. We walked up to it, but it was just a little bit of like the Psycho house was built on the Universal lot. It was just, you had to look at it from this perspective. Then it looked like a complete hood. But if you moved 15 feet to your right, you saw that it was not a real house. So there was stuff like that I always thought, man, these old gags we did were always so cool, because it made the life easier for production, but also we know that it wasn't real and nobody else did, so. And the art teams that we somehow conned them into being part of the show, they were always so talented. Like, they went off to do amazing things, but we would get them at a time where they were like, yeah, I read the script and I thought, Teen Wolf, that can't be. And then they would do the show and they're like, yeah, all right, you guys are on the right track. So yeah, no, almost every set, there was an underground, there was like a steel mill that we went to that was in the middle of the city, and we had to go underground, and we had built it into like a railway stop. It was an empty room that was scary to go in. And the team built this amazing, I think it was where Tyler Hoechlin had lived at one time, and we did a bunch of scenes down there. I was always very impressed with the work that the scenics and the set builders and the designers would do on that show.
So fascinating to learn, like, the behind the scenes of everything like that.
It's really cool.
Yeah. What was a typical work day like for you when filming an episode of Teen Wolf? How did you prepare for a new episode?
So I learned that this was unusual later on in life. So I shot every single episode from pilot to season 2, so 24 plus 1. So I would shoot during the day, and the next director and AD team would come on at lunch or come to set and would talk about things that were going to be new or introduced into, the next episode, so that we had always been, getting ready for the new thing. And since I was always shooting them, it was easier for them to come meet me and would talk through it when I had a minute. And then my team would get on that to start doing whatever new thing. So a typical day for me would be, get up, we would shoot until lunchtime, and usually I would have a lunchtime meeting with either the current creative team moving forward, because we would do so much, and I think it started with like 8 days and went to 7 days an episode, and on one of those days we do sort of 2 units at the same time. So at lunchtime I would meet and either continue talking more about what was happening later in that week, or what would be introduced in the next episode with the new director, or something that we had to manage. And then by the end of the week, we're fully understood of what we're walking into the next starting day, which, Monday through Friday. So Monday morning being another adventure. The cool thing is that there was never every other episode was a new team. They did the block thing where one director would do 3 or 2 in a row, and then the next person would do 2 or 3 in a row. So it would make it a little bit more of a long, creative block instead of things changing all the time. I think it made it easier for not only us as the craftsmen, but also the script supervising teams and the ADs, as well as the cast too, because everybody talks a little different, explains things a little different, has a little bit different of a way to approach a scene too, whether they're stronger, traditional shooters where it's traditional coverage and traditional wides, or they're crazy where they want to do, everything handheld or on a Steadicam. It's easier to do it in longer bursts than just everything changing all the time.
That makes sense.
Yeah, that's cool. So it's almost like a movie schedule, almost like you almost have like a little indie film schedule where it's like a little 21-day shoot of 3 episodes. So that's cool. That's really cool.
I don't know if that was a good answer or not, but that was basically.
It was good.
It was very good. Yes.
How did season 2 feel different from season 1?
I think traditionally, I think season 2 usually is not as good because it seems like the hype from season 1 goes into new situations with season 2. Typically, people say season 2 is never usually as fun or as good as 1, but 3 is awesome. So it's 2.
Sophomore slump.
Right. So I didn't know that either. Again, because this is where I started. But season 2 was great for us because we knew that we could do it, and we knew that everybody was going to like it. I mean, season 1, the whole time we were shooting it, we didn't know. Hopefully the people haven't seen any of this. The studio has given us the go ahead to go shoot the show. The audiences don't know anything about it. So we're just hoping that, that first episode plays and people are like, all right, I'll stay, I'll watch it next week, and so on. So after season 1 worked, everybody came back super ready to make as cool a TV show as they possibly could. I definitely did. The directors definitely did. And Jeff definitely did. And so I feel like it was a nonstop, how much can we push it? Because we did with the schedule and the visuals, I think got a lot bigger. The technology, again, to bring that up, got better. And our pipeline got a little bit more sorted out for everything from being able to have the scripts at a certain time so that they weren't hot off the press because, we had the ability to do things late in season 1, but in season 2, we needed to have everything sort of ready to go because that was, that would make it a lot more streamlined. If there wasn't like a page that came out and said, and we're building a barn that has to, explode. Like, wait, tomorrow? No. So so that whole process, everything got way more streamlined. And I think it was because of that, we had a bigger show without adding money to it, without adding time.
That's cool. It's so, I guess I could see that where it's like, the season 1 is kind of like the test. Does anybody care about this thing? And then it's like, the answer is yes. And then season 2 is like, well, we know how to do it. How can we do it better with everything we've learned? And that's really awesome. That's really cool.
I mean, yeah, one of the major things is season 1 was a lot of practical locations because I think, the studio and everybody involved didn't know if it was going to go for another season, right? So they didn't want to spend half their budget building sets that could theoretically not work, right? Like maybe they'd have to so a lot of the stuff changed if you watch, from people's houses to, environments got made because once you got greenlit to do another season, they knew that there's probably a third one too. So let's go ahead and let's jump in and start building these pieces to make it cool.
Yeah.
So yeah,
that's cool. That's really cool. As the cinematographer or director of photography, do you prefer shooting on sets or locations?
I'm definitely a location guy. I come from the indie movie world where, if it's a 3-dimensional environment, I prefer it.
Nice.
Sets are, again, this might just be me, but sets are always a thing where it's the first, once you're done lighting it and you put a camera there, the first question I always ask myself is, do I believe that it's real? Does it feel like a real place to you? And because because you're always on a set. You always feel like you have to try to hide something.
Right.
You know? So
That's cool. Speaking of like sets versus location, to jump back a little bit when you were talking about the preserve with the river and that scene with Colton coming up out of the water, I feel like that is a perfect example of just how amazing looking the show was. Where if you just show that little bit with Colton and then show that to someone and then be like, how much do you think this show costs? You know, it's like, what do you think that budget was? I think someone would honestly be like $5 million an episode, or so we're like, is this an HBO prestige show? You know, it just looks so good. Like every single episode looks so good. And this kind of theme that's been going through all of our interviews is never enough time, never enough money, which I remember from working on the show, but it's like, you would never know that watching it. Like, I feel like sometimes you can tell like that something is really low budget, you know, and they're working with what they got, and that's commendable. And there's nothing wrong with that, but you can tell watching it. But then like you look at Teen Wolf and it's just like every single penny is on that screen right there that you're watching, that it just looks so good all the time. And it's just, so good. So good.
Well, one of the things that I'm sure eventually people got this, because in the later seasons, I think they changed out, but the lacrosse, which I thought was amazing. Jeff has a great reason why he has lacrosse in there, but I thought the first thing they said is we need a lacrosse field. Nobody had a lacrosse field in Georgia. And we also couldn't, I don't think our budget would allow us shutting down a place, and we didn't have the time. Anyway, so Russell and I literally sat in his office once trying to figure out how do we fake it. And I said, well, there's movie lights out there that look like stadium lights. And I showed him. And he said, great, how high can we get them? And I'm like, we'll put them on lifts and we'll just backlight so the pitch that they did all of their lacrosse on was just an empty field, not too far from the production office, that we just put these stadium lights, and we did a thing with, I don't know if you're allowed to say it more, but it's called French reversing, where if we went one way, we would just switch the teams to the other sides of the field and then go the other way. We only looked one direction.
Oh, I never noticed that.
That's crazy.
So that we never had to move the lights. So we basically stadiumed these sort of giant stadium lights high up and made like a row of them. And then we had the kids, you know, play in front of them, and it would light up, you know, have steam and everything, so you wouldn't see beyond them really well. And then anytime we needed to have coverage on the other side of the field, they would just get on the other side of the field, so they were going the right direction the whole time. So a red team was always going left, and a blue team was always going right. So we just had to keep track of that. That was the only thing. Are they going the right way? Okay, good.
Oh my God. I would lose my mind trying to keep track of all of that. I would forget everything. So basically, I guess you would just use those stadium lights as like your giant key light, and then just come in with, I don't know, bounces or a little bit of fill and all. Oh, wow. That saves a lot of time, you know? So it's like, you don't got to worry about that.
I would love to take creative credit for it, but a lot of the creative decisions came from, you know, a need. How do we spend less time doing this scene so that we spend more time on the dramatic stuff? You know, because it does take time to do other things, and you know, screen time is also a factor too. Like, oh, we're just going to see these guys run across the field in like 10 frames. Okay, make it an amazing 10-frame shot. Great. Now we're going to get to the one that's a 3-minute scene of two people like pouring their heart out. Okay, spend some more time there. So it was always this balance act of how can we never let the audience know that we had to always, you know, move the deck.
Nice. That's really cool. Never would have thought of that.
Yeah. You never guess, because like, yeah, those games all look so amazing and like intense and everything. And yeah, I never would have guessed it was just
cinematic sleight of hand.
Yeah, exactly. So you talked a little bit about what it was like filming a typical episode, and preparing for a new one. But what was it like working with a director to make their vision come to life?
On my work, for the time that I was on Teen Wolf, I was fortunate to really not have too many directors. It was pretty much, it's not a bad thing. I just, these two main directors And then we had one visiting director the whole time I was there, because the season 1 primarily was Russell pushing really hard to get as much as possible. And I think Tim Andrew came in he was a producer on the show, and he had directed a lot of other things. But I think he came in to help take some of the tension off of Russell to prep the other bigger ones. And then what happened in season 2 is they became a team where they did they did a lot of switching. And so I knew both of them, and they both lived at the office for the most part. Tim had a job that he had to do no matter what, even when he wasn't directing, with the show to deliver it. He was one of the producers who was handling the business portion of the show. And then when it was his time to direct, he would be the director, but he was always there. So it would always be like, hey, Jonathan, you got a second? I want to talk to you about this thing. So it was my work environment was always consistent. We only had, in the time that I was there, I only had one director that was a guest director that showed up, and I think it was Toby.
Toby, yeah.
Yeah, Toby Wilkins. Toby Wilkins came in, and I think they only did 1 or maybe 2 episodes. The good thing, he came from an editorial background, so he had everything very much so designed as an editor would. So a lot of his stuff with me was more, how do I make this more like visually interesting to go cohesively with the show? And I love hearing that. Like, Jonathan, be creative. You got it. Give me a couple minutes. We'll find a way and we'll present you with a few options, and you tell me which one you like. So yeah, I was fortunate enough to where I wasn't having to learn a style or come up with a good way to work with somebody new all the time. I could imagine that gets a lot more unique depending on how much more that new director wants to take their sort of footprint in that episode or anything. Because it's a balancing act, I can imagine, for any guest director to, how do I go in there and do something that I like and that my style lends to, but still not make my episode look like a glowing red dot of unusual in the series, So I could imagine it's very hard as a director doing that. For me, it was a blast because I like working with new people.
Wonderful.
Do you have a favorite episode of Teen Wolf?
I don't. I'm trying to think how to give you guys something better to use though. Because the way that I saw them all is out of order shot. So I have some favorite scenes that I remember shooting that I thought were meaningful to do, and they always sort of stuck with me. A lot of the stuff was early season 1 stuff with Stiles, with Dylan O'Brien and Tyler Posey, communicating like high school kids were, because they were actually high school kids. They weren't adults playing high school kids. So they were authentic voices in an environment that they belonged. I mean, they were in their teens. So when these 2 teenagers would have these scenes where they were being buddies, and Dylan or Stiles is asking Tyler to talk to a girl for him or ask about it. It was so authentic, and I remember thinking, man, you don't have to like coach them to sound younger because they sound the part. And I remember that being a big deal. The first time I met Dylan, me and Russell we had just got to Atlanta, and we met the cast again and everything. And I remember I had not met Dylan yet. And I met him, and I got to hang out with him for a little bit because we were all doing a table read and everything. And I leaned over to Russell, and I said, I think that guy's going to be a big star. Dylan O'Brien was a big star from the beginning. And same with Tyler Posey. I remember when I met him for the first time, like, wow, that's the kid that I remember in some of these movies. He's great. Where the hell has he been? Now he's our lead. So they had a very great, they had fantastic luck finding very talented young actors. And I am very much so happy that I was involved with it.
Wonderful.
everyone is it's such a talented cast. It's very impressive, especially for like a teen show. Some others you watch and it's like, there's some good actors, but there's also some bad ones. But Teen Wolf, it's just very strong cast.
I don't know how much we're allowed to talk about other shows, but
you can trash talk wherever.
As much as you want.
Not trash, but like down the street from where we had our offices was Vampire Diaries, shooting a similar show in a similar way with twice the money, but their casts were way older than what they played. So I remember it being a thing that it was like ours are actually 17. Like I feel like ours feels more genuine. Is as ridiculous as that sounds, right? There was one of the things that we kept kind of feeling good about, that at the end of the day, it's an authentic show. People, it felt the age that it was trying to be, which I think is always hard for television and what we've known, in the CW world, and traditionally even with like things like 90210 when I was a kid. These 30-year-olds were playing high school kids. And you're like, oh, I guess that's how high school kids look. No, they don't. They do on television, or they did.
Yeah.
Yeah. It can be really distracting.
Very distracting.
Someone who's like 35 pretend to be 17.
Yeah. Come on, Ian Somerhalder. I know you're not 17. Let's. My God. Also, I have no problem trash talking other shows. Vampire Diaries had maybe twice the budget, but had half the look. Like, I've seen a whole bunch of scenes from that show. It just looked boring. Like, it just didn't have like a style to it. Like, I feel like Teen Wolf just like came in with like a mood and atmosphere for like a supernatural show. And it's like, you look at like a shot from Teen Wolf of people walking around in the woods. You're like, this is scary. Like, I don't want to be in these woods right now. And then you watch some people walk around with Vampire Diaries, and it's just like, why is no one acting scared?
Right.
Why it's just, they're supposed to be doing something intense and they're supposed to be fearful, but they're just like, just walking and like, put some fog out there or something. Like what are we doing here?
Yeah. That was back with the technology thing where I said, it's only going to really work if it's dark, guys. Like, because it's the minute somebody calls and says it's too dark and it's not, it's too, like, I got to turn up my television set to see things, then we're in trouble. But if they're fine with it, I say we stay or keep going until they say stop, because television has traditionally, and it has changed a lot recently, since a lot of indie film people have gotten into it, both in front of camera and behind camera, that shows aren't just shotgun lit like a soccer stadium, and so that you can shoot in every direction at any time, no matter what. They're focused. And I think that we've learned that, and that was the only way I knew coming from indie film, is that if we just have a plan to shoot the stuff that we will use and not more than what we will, like, just get the stuff that we want and don't just shotgun a bunch of things, then we can do better quality of those things. So instead of shooting a dozen shots of somebody running through the woods, why don't we shoot 3 of them that we know we're going to love? So that was my approach. And what I always did was just make it a little darker on this one. Okay, cool. Hopefully they use the darker one. I was more afraid of Vampire Diaries and some of the stuff on the CW. It always felt very, you said less scary. It always felt very bright. Like at nighttime, you can see anything at any time. And why do they have a flashlight? Because it's not as bright as the moon, kind of. So,
yeah, it definitely feels like with some shows, they're like, we're making a TV show. And it's like, but you don't have to. It's like you can make whatever you want to make for the television. But it's just like, just make it scary, please.
I don't think Vampire Diaries was trying to be horror, really.
I guess
it was trying to be romantic fantasy. It wasn't trying to be horror. And I think that was something that really surprised people about Teen Wolf, because certainly the 80s one was not trying to be horror at any time.
That's true.
It was never going for that.
That is accurate.
That's true. Yeah. The gorilla suit, right? Yeah.
Exactly.
It's funny you were talking about Styles and Scott scenes being some of your favorites, because I actually had a question about a specific scene. Well, first I wanted to say how much I love the scene in Lunatic whenever Scott is having a panic attack and Styles is trying to talk him down the locker room, and you have a fan behind Styles and there's like the shadows moving across Scott's face. And I thought that was just a really cool effect. How do you set up a shot like that? And how do you walk the line between something that's a really cool effect like that and something that might distract the audience?
So I had to look up what you were talking about, and I remember once I found it, I know exactly why she asked that question. So I remember that the pages came out and that the scene took place in a locker room shower. Well, traditionally in locker room showers, it's not going to be windows or anything interesting. It's a tile wall, right? It's designed go in, shower, and leave, and it's private. So how do you make this at night when school is not operating, so lights are off? How do you make this scene edgy because of what's happening in the scene, but also intimate? And I think Tim had asked for a few, I think Tim did that episode. He had asked for a few element ideas of how do we make maybe the lighting interesting that might be able to kind of foreshadow what's going on or what will happen in the scene. And I think he came up with the propeller idea of like one of the wind fans that would for evacuating steam out of the room or something. So somebody built that and we put it into the locker room. And I think the concept was to build a ticking clock, like a metronome in the scene, because time, something either bad's going to happen or something isn't, but we don't know which way it's going to go. And with the propeller, it kind of had a consistent sort of visual that mixed up the scene. And there, you're right. It becomes, I know when we were filming it, we were trying to figure out, was it going too fast? Oh, now it's going too slow. Like, let's find the right tuning to make that thing so it's not super schizophrenic or seizure inducing, but also is still doing the ticking clock metronome feel to this scene. And I think it ended up working out well. And to answer your question, how do you approach it? We did it a few different ways with different speeds. We did it with it off, but we really wanted to work with it on. And I think that they used it the way that it was supposed to.
It's a beautiful shot. I really love it.
It's quite wonderful.
I think it really adds something. It's very interesting what you're talking about, like a metronome there. I didn't think of it like that, but that's really interesting now that you've told me that.
And again, so that mine was the sort of the $100 version that I just said. The other way to explain it too was, how do we make a boring room interesting? Give me some ideas. So that was, we would throw out 1 million of them, and that one seemed to work the best. So
it's a little bit
creative solutions.
Film noir too, working with the architecture of shadows on the characters' faces. And it looks great.
Thank you.
Do you have a favorite Teen Wolf character?
I was a Styles fan because I always felt like I was going to high school anyway. Dylan showed up as Dylan and played Styles exactly the way that he was in real life. He's a very genuine guy, and his character is fun. I feel like his character is the best situation of all the things. He gets to witness all the stuff happening without having to actually transform himself or have to worry about, killing his friends. So he was always sort of the helper or the conduit in the whole show, whether it was helping to hunt something and to stop it or to save it. And same thing with chasing his love the whole time. He was either in a perfect line with her, or he was completely off the path and he needed help. He was always a fun character, and I thought that Dylan did a great job with Styles. And it was a 180 from the movie, which I thought was fantastic.
I think everything's a 180 from the movie in the best possible way.
Yeah, I mean, they took a character that is pretty borderline terrible in the movie, and made him to be such a lovable young boy that is like experiencing his youth in a great way with his friend, and now with sort of this really odd situation that they're going through all that with together.
Nice.
I think Styles is one of the greatest like fictional characters ever, and I think it's like you said, he's feels so genuine. I think that's, but still entertaining to watch. Not so genuine that he's just boring.
I always thought Holland was great. I always thought Lydia's character was really fun. They, Crystal with the Allison character, she always seemed to have to be like the business character. Like everything she did had, there had to be that character where she's the love interest with Tyler. She's, got a bunch of drama in her family, and she's got everything is all business with her. It's black and white, and she acts on what she is, needs to for her family and her emotions with Scott. But Lydia kind of gets to be, Holland gets to be the Styles equivalent. She gets to kind of do what she wants with her own style, and she is also a conduit for all the characters, including Colton's character, and all this sort of odd stuff that she gets to get away with doing in the show, because she isn't all business. She's kind of the fun, kind of sassy element of the show, and I thought she did a great job with it.
Absolutely,
yes.
She's a great actress. What films or television shows inspired you to get into the industry?
It was always movies. I watched a ton of movies when I was a kid growing up. I wore out plenty of VHS players. When I was younger, television wasn't what it is today. Television, it was almost the opposite of it, how it is today, where almost everybody I knew would talk about movies and how movies was the echelon to get to. And television was sort of the in-between. You did it if you had to, or you didn't aspire. A lot of people that I went to school with, they didn't aspire to be into television. I always thought it was cool. I always thought it could be more interesting. And I'd like to say that I was right, because television today is entirely a different direction, way more interesting than it has ever thought that it could have been.
Absolutely.
And I think people are realizing that. I think it was just a different culture that was in television for a long time, a different filmmaking culture. So they did everything a little bit more traditionally, and they didn't push the boundaries too much, because, your schedule was your schedule. You couldn't wiggle it too much. You needed to be as easy as possible, and it had to be the only person that cycled out was the new director. Everything else needed to stay the same. Like, for the longest time, I feel like it was that. It was a machine, and you just needed to change the person who was, raising the flag. That was it. Now, I think they realize that they're small movies, and they can shape shift, they can change, they can be completely different from season 1 to season 2, and even episode to episode, they can be different. We've proved that we can get away with that today in serialized content. So there's always movies, and that's what I wanted to bring into the television endeavor was to bring the cinema quality of things that I was used to and that I enjoy to television.
That's awesome.
Yeah. I think very successful on that.
Yes.
You were the DP for the movie Zombieverse, and I am intrigued. I have 2 related questions. One, should we watch this as part of our Teen Wolf Movie Club, where we watch movies featuring the work of the Teen Wolf cast and crew? And then second question, were any Zombievers harmed in the making of that film?
I'll answer the second one first. I guarantee there were many harmed. Yes, I did the movie Zombievers. The quickest way to explain how I was on that film, I'll say this first. I'm very happy I did that movie. In all the other work that I've ever done, Teen Wolf is maybe close with it, but no matter where I am in any part of the world, if I say I'm a filmmaker and they say anything, tell me some of the stuff you've done. If I rattle off a bunch of art pictures that I've done, their eyes, glaze over. They don't really know. And then I say, I did a movie called Zombievers. I was in the desert in Morocco on a thing one time, and the people knew exactly what that was.
That is awesome.
So that movie travels more than anything I've ever done. And I did it because I met the director, and I read the script, and I'm like, this script is insane. What? And it was called the Untitled Jordan Rubin Project. And we were represented at the same place, and they tried to put the team together. And after the meeting, he and I got along very well. He's a very visual based filmmaker, and he and I get along great. And he said, "Hey, do you want?" Before I left on that first introduction, we were on the same page for everything, and I figured, I'm sure you're interviewing a bunch of people. I'd love to work with you one day, if not on this, whatever. He's like, "Do you want to know the name of the movie?" I said, "Well, yeah. What, you have a name already?" He's like, "Yeah, it's Zombievers." And I'm like, "I'm going to go call somebody right now. I hope that I am your guy." Like, that's really the name of it? He's like, yeah. I'm like, "I'm in, man. I'm in 100%. So we did it. And his whole pitch was he wanted to do a modern 90s horror movie with puppets. He wanted to be like The Thing. He wanted to make The Thing, but his horror element, he wanted to be a fake beaver. He didn't want it to be a real thing. I mean, they had tried to talk him into actually having trained animals on set, and he said, "No, I wanted it to be a little bit like a throwback." And I'm glad it did, because I think that that's kind of a charming thing in a movie that is ridiculous. Like, it's an absurd film, but I had a ton of fun making it, and I am very happy to have met Jordan on that.
Nice.
It's fantastic.
Well, I'm convinced. I think we should add that to our lineup.
Yes.
We don't have to watch it on your show.
Yes. This isn't a question. I just want to say that I really love Children's Hospital, and I'm happy that you were a part of it, because you helped make it nuts. Just this incredibly nuts show that was somehow like really good and had interesting messages for a show set in a hospital with a guy dressed like a clown, and then Lake Bell. So
that company that produces content that did that show and have done, I think it's Abominable. They make good shows, and I was lucky to be a part of it. The DP needed some reached out, and I got involved with it, and yeah, it's a great show.
that's
It
awesome.
was a great show. Everybody
Yes.
on it was funny. No matter what character, no matter what walk on, you didn't know what to expect any given day of who was going to actually be on the
It was
show.
kind of ridiculous for like an 11-minute show on Adult Swim at midnight. It's like literally anyone could show up, and it's like how did they do this thing? But yes, so just wanted to gush for just a second, but thank you.
The fight scene in Lunatic is incredibly impressive. Was it difficult to film scenes like that when you have to use stunt doubles, knowing that's important to not see their faces for the audience?
It is difficult, but again, if you're organized, and I come from a lot of action film background, from B movies to studio movies as first and second unit on fight scenes, car scenes, stuff like that. So that kind of thing is very easy to me. But the one thing, like you said, you have to watch out for is, how do we not give it away in the first shot? How do we make sure that a stunt double looks like the real thing in every given shot? And that comes down to Russell is very good at that. Tim was very good at that. He would listen to the coordinators and the stunt actors and figure out how, when they got hit and spun around and landed, how do they face the other way so that we can cut to the real thing? And they take time and they take organization, but you lean heavily on your coordinators and your stunt team to make sure that they are doing their part to hide who they are, as well as your script supervisor is doing a lot of notes to make sure that, we saw clear as day, this is not Scott. You saw clear as day. This is okay, great. Mark that. We'll do it again. Like, maybe we'll do it from a different camera angle so that there's another option. So, but it's fun. It's a lot of fun to come up with original ways to do every single. There's only so many fights you can shoot in so many unique ways. You have to always come up with a different perspective.
Yeah, I think Teen Wolf did a really good job of not having boring fight scenes like that. There's definitely other shows I watch where it's like, and I'm just watching like the same fight scene again and again for like 5 seasons. But Teen Wolf never felt that way.
Good.
What was the movie we were watching, Calissa, where
Phantasm.
you knew exactly what I was going to ask about.
That's because we bring it up a lot.
Yeah, I don't normally notice that kind of stuff very well. But watching Phantasm, there was like a stunt involving, I think, what was supposed to be a child, and dude had a beard. It was just
it was a 70s mustache that he had.
That's what it was. That's what it was.
Yeah. So it went
Yeah.
from being like a child to a guy with a 70s mustache.
Well, I think one of the mistakes, a lot of stunt, I'm sure I'm going to get a lot of emails from stunt friends of mine, but a lot of stunt players, actors, their tendency is, if they're a male stunt performer, their tendency is to get bulked up and like be super fit and look like an Instagram, model. And a lot of times you're doubling somebody who either doesn't look that way at all or is half the size of you, right? So you almost have to have a specialty. If you're going to be the chiseled dude, you're only going to work on Marvel movies doubling a chiseled guy. But when it comes to younger, characters, a lot of times it ends up being shorter female stunt players that'll play young boys because they're not muscular guys. I'm not muscular, so there's a guy who's all chiseled out is going to be completely different looking than me from any angle. So it's funny. The tendency is always to look as fit and great as possible, but that's not necessarily what you need to do. Sometimes you have to have the right size and everything. Like, you don't want to just be a perfect specimen. So
The Peter Pan approach, just have an adult woman do it. There you go.
I always thought it was great. Like you these guys who are cool, high school jocks. Their stunt double would be a kind of a bubbly stunt woman. Like, hey, I'll put the helmet on. Great, so you don't know it's me.
Let's get Zoe Bell over here.
There you go. Yes, good Zoe Bell.
100 high school guy. So
Nice.
If you could be any Teen Wolf creature, what would you be?
Creature. I always thought that they would try to come up with new characters for scaring, that weren't just wolves. And in the later seasons, they ended up doing more of that. But I always thought, I was just a look-based guy. So I always thought, well, how can we make somebody normal look terrifying? And I always thought going with a normal person dipped in matte black liquid latex would be terrifying to run into.
Oh.
So I think they tried it once and they didn't have a place for it. I think they used it later in the season. But I thought any character that looks human but slightly unusual is more terrifying than something that has 2 heads, to me.
Uncanny Valley more. So
Yeah.
You worked on one of my absolute favorite episodes of season 2, Abomination. What was it like working with Tyler Hoechlin and Dylan O'Brien for that? I particularly love the scene whenever Styles is swimming down to get Derek, and he brings him back up to the surface after he's dropped him. How is an underwater scene like that filmed?
Very carefully. I don't honestly, in all fairness, Tyler Hoechlin can hold his breath for a real long time. It's dangerous to work underwater, obviously, right? And so you kind of test where's your safety level. Where, as an actor, you're the one, you tell us when it's too much. And I don't. I can swim. I was forced on that show to figure out how to shoot underwater. I didn't scuba dive before then. And Tyler, it could do these shots where we could film him for 15 seconds underwater and he would drift to the bottom. And we're watching it on a monitor safe above water, eating a sandwich on a monitor. We're like, wow, how long's he been under there? We're still rolling. He did a great job. he in full clothes too. That's gotta be worse. Jeans kind of are tough to swim in.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, the water stuff, we did a little bit in season 1, in a pool in the very beginning where Tyler jumps into the pool and I did a shot of him in the pool, but that was way tame, and we did it later. I think we did it in California afterward. But the scene in the pool for Hecklin was all him being huge weight. So
it's crazy.
I don't know. I couldn't have done it. Yeah, he sunk to the bottom like a stone too.
Yeah.
All that muscle weighing him down.
All that muscle, right? Yeah.
So we know he's not a witch. Definitely.
No.
And that was one of the other things. Back to, you said you were asking if there's anything cool that stuck in my head. That place that we shot was like that pool was like a rec center just outside of the main downtown Atlanta, Georgia. And the time that we were there, time of the year, people weren't really going swimming because it was freezing out. I mean, I think there was a snowstorm a week earlier than that. And so we just had this giant aquatic center to ourselves for a while. So I think we filmed there a couple times that season, both during the day and night. And, we were really given a lot of free reign, both from the studio to go try unique things, as well as the city to go, oh yeah, no, it's available. Go ahead. So we were very fortunate looking back on it now, where to do stuff like that today, especially in somewhere as crowded as Atlanta now for television, it would be very hard to do.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
So you had to learn to scuba dive for those underwater scenes?
Learn is a very stretched out. We didn't have our person that in the first season, we had to do an underwater shot and our guy didn't show up. That was going to do the underwater stuff. So they all kind of looked at me. I'm like, what? I don't scuba dive. So my key grip on the show was going to be the water safety person, because he does scuba dive. So like, come over here, I'm gonna show you something. I don't know how illegal this is, but he basically showed me how to do it. And so I'm like, fine, I'll do it. Put the thing in, I get the wetsuit and I start going into the water, and the water's I'm like, all right, here we go. I go underwater, and stop. And then I get myself out. I'm like, I can't do this, and then you just psych yourself out. Where I kept telling myself, you can breathe underwater, you can breathe underwater, you can breathe underwater, you can breathe underwater. Finally, I get to the place under, we do the shot, and I come out, and the key grip said, oh, you did a great job. And then he looks at my tank, and evidently I had sucked through so much oxygen, like to the equivalent of, I was under there for like 5 or 8 minutes. But he said, you've sucked through like 2 hours worth of oxygen. I was just under there, just.
Oh no!
Like, it was just terrifying. But after that, I went and got certified.
That's
Cool. Oh my god!
Only one shot. It's just we didn't have any way to do it, and so somebody had to figure out how to do it.
Well, that's the Teen Wolf way. The person didn't show up. We got to figure it out.
Very early on, I don't think that would have fly today, but it did work then.
Nice. Very nice. Well, Jonathan, are there any upcoming projects you can tell us about?
Nothing in the television world right now, sadly, but I've done a slew of movies. We're coming out of this COVID lockdown a little bit at a time, and during the pandemic, I was able to do a World War II film that was entitled, or it was originally titled Ave Maria, but I think it's going to be called something else.
Go on. That's my favorite war.
He loves.
I'm a
He really does
huge
love
World War II nerd.
movies, so.
World War
Yes.
II nerd. So
It was a lot of fun. I remember rolling my eyes a couple of years ago thinking, God, we're doing another World War II movies on the, in the theaters and all that kind of a thing. Because so many were done so bad. So you're like, this is painful. But this script came across to a director that I work with often. And it's essentially Three Kings in World War II.
nice.
But like a true story that actually took place where,
Very cool.
Americans wanted to go find all that gold that wasn't accounted.
Yep. Yeah.
So, that picture's coming out, and I just finished one actually in Atlanta. That is another action shoot 'em up Get Revenge.
Nice.
That'd be out next year. But yeah, no, it's been busy for how much we've had to pause. So I can't complain.
Well, fantastic. That's great. I'm glad you're
Awesome.
working. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Well, this has been a pleasure, Jonathan. This has been
It was
wonderful.
Usually my stuff isn't very interesting to talk about to normal people.
Oh, this is fascinating. This is so
Yeah, I
cool.
thought it was super interesting.
Yeah, I've learned like so much, and it's just been really cool to speak with you.
Yeah, thank you so much for sitting down with us.
Of course, I'm glad it worked out. Sorry, my schedule's been a little weird.
No worries. Hey,
Oh.
you're busy. You're doing stuff. That's fantastic. I mean, that's the best problem
Good problem to have.
So,
Yeah.
yeah. A good problem to have. So, well, thank you so much, Jonathan, for joining us. And we hope you have an amazing night. Okay.
Thank you very much. You guys as well. Thank you for inviting me.
Thank you.
Awesome.
Thank you for
Thanks.
joining us.
Have a good one.
Yeah.
Bye.
Bye.